All right, what is up, guys? We are back. Isaiah and myself, we are going to do a podcast today on tips for the penultimate step. Our goal is kind of to go back through and revisit a lot of the topics that we covered maybe 2020, even like before then, 2019, when we first started the business. I mean, obviously, we've learned a lot since then, and we've probably changed our opinions on things. And I think it would be good to do that for you guys, so that you're not always just consuming dated information, and we're staying up to date and current with things. That being said, as you guys know, I'm John Evans. I coach the highest jumper in the world. This is Isaiah. He's the highest jumper in the world. One of. We also coach Tony Crosby and Donovan Hawkins. Both of those athletes have, Tony's officially tested 50, I think 50.5, and Donovan has flight times that are equating to around 50. So hopefully we'll get him to actualize that. On that note, Donovan was actually here last week, and if you guys haven't seen that video, go to Isaiah's channel and watch. It was a freaky session. It was super fun to watch in person. It was like what I've always wanted. Just watching three pro dunkers dunk on high schoolers or freshmen in college. It was glorious. It was fun. But that being said, let's get into it. So Isaiah, tell me, what do you think now for 2 foot specifically? Maybe we can split this up. What are your top 5 tips you would say
for 2 foot jumping specifically, or the penultimate?
Penultimate step for 2 foot jumping.
Don't start your approach too quickly.
Like out of the back, you mean?
Yeah. Like first step, don't just start sprinting. Especially if you're a beginner, you're better off even walking into the penultimate step, to be honest.
All right, let's do this. We'll do 10 tips. We'll go back and forth.
Okay.
If we get to 10, maybe we'll get to 10. Who knows?
All right, you're up next.
I would say for 2 foot, I would always recommend starting with one stride. So start with one step, go to 2, go to 3, go to 4, etc. Work your way back. That would be my second one. I would say master that first stride. That is the most. If you can't do it off 1, you certainly can't do it off 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, I agree with that. My third tip: big push. Push with that back leg hard.
I like that. That's a good one. Mine would be, if you're struggling on lengthening your penultimate step, go with a sensation of a long roll and leaving the leg behind the body.
Number 5, put something on the ground to mark where you want to take your step from, and then a second marker where you want your plant foot to hit.
Wait, what number is that?
That was number 5.
Oh, that was 5?
Yeah.
Okay, number 6 would be, if you're not low, keep your shoulders down. Keep your shoulders down and look at the ground if you find yourself not being low.
You know what's really interesting about that tip? I mean, I don't do that.
I think this is if you're not low and you suck at this and you need to work on it, then I would recommend looking down at the ground and leaning forward a lot, because that will force you to be low. That will force you to learn how to be low. Ideally, you're not doing that. But if you really suck, you're really not good at it, then I think that it kind of forces you to be in a good position. But maybe the 7th tip would be, if you're hitting the cones and you're doing that off one step and all the other things, leaving the leg behind the body, pushing hard, etc., it would be your rhythm of the last 2 steps has to be
quick.
Not synchronized. That's not the word I'm looking for. Almost
instantaneous.
In unison. Yeah, almost in unison. The last 2 strides have to be in unison. If you're going to do that, the biggest problem I see guys have when they try to do the penultimate step is that they forget that the rhythm of the last 2 steps almost have to be happening at the exact same time. They have to be synchronized, in unison. And if they're not, you're probably going to lose all the momentum. You're not going to benefit from the momentum or any of the aspects that you were trying to take advantage of during the penultimate step. If you don't do that, it's just not going to matter. It also is way more loading on your legs, which makes sense. So you got to be careful with knee pain. But what were you going to say though?
Going back to your the shoulders down tip, there's been 2 main type of 2 foot jumpers that I've seen, and it's the CJ types, where there's a lot of hip flexion and stuff, and then guys like me, where I stay really upright as I pushed through the penultimate. And I was just thinking it could actually be due to mobility.
No, I think it is. I think it is. I think
If
that
you
when
look
you
at my
lean
penultimate,
forward,
yeah, like my knees, like I'm in a lot of dorsiflexion, like a ton.
I think that and your hip flexors are really flexible. And
Yeah,
I've always thought that, like, when you have a lack of mobility, you have to lean forward because that allows you to get into more hip extension. Like, if you guys don't know anything about anatomy, basically, when you're in posterior tilt, which is your pelvis rotating like forward, almost as if, for lack of a better word, oh, no, I can't even say that. I'm going to be PC. But it's like tucking your belly button in and like rotating your pelvis upwards. And
you're
then
doing like a Michael Jackson.
yeah, exactly. And then anterior tilt is like big booty Judy, ass out, what you see like girls walk around at the gym like, so it makes their butt look bigger. When you do that, when you walk with your ass out, it makes flexion very difficult. Like you can't lift your knee very high. That's why sprinters don't run with their ass out. Their pelvis is like tucked underneath because it makes getting the knee in front, especially upright sprinting, easier. And when you have shitty mobility, you can adjust the position of your pelvis to be able to push over a longer interval, accelerate more, and still maintain being low. That's why I always say the biggest thing is, are you low and are you fast? Like there are a lot of ways to do it, but if you're not low, if it's not happening naturally and you're like very upright, I would say lean forward. Like try to lean forward and get into a better position. Typically that reserves for like, I don't want to say uncoordinated athletes, but like that's when I give that cue to people when they're just motor morons. It
Yeah,
looks really ugly. You know, I was actually looking at Nathan's technique, and when he started to versus where he is now, dude, he has
I
made
noticed that too.
improvements, like night and day improvements. And because like people in the comments were kind of saying, how can you say he's not genetically gifted? Like he has a 43-inch vertical. And I'm like, he's not. Like he's not. He's just trained for 20 hours a week for the last 5 or 6 years. Like he's trained
And you
his
got to think
balls off, dude.
leading into him working with us, like he didn't fall in love with jumping and then start working with us. Like he liked jumping. Like
Exactly.
and basketball, I think was his favorite sport too. So he had been jumping for a long time, like leading up to that.
It was just that he actually took the time to fix things. Like he took us seriously, and it wasn't, he actually took the advice we gave to heart versus some people when it doesn't work overnight. They're like, oh, well, then I'm just going to stop everything. Like I'm not going to do anything because, and then their ceiling is way lower. Like I see it happen all the time. Guys will just throw out all the things that they've learned because the progress doesn't happen as fast as they want. You know, like even technically for 2 foot, Alex Artizone texted me and he was like, why don't you just stick with this? Like, you're better than I am in like 6 months. Or sorry, you're better in 6 months than I was after like years of training. And I was like, I mean, you make a good point, but the bigger issue was my back was getting wrecked. And I was like, and I missed 1 foot jumping. So it is still possible it'll go back to 2 foot because, you know, there is probably a lot more potential there. And then the other issue is I lacked internal rotation. So I was like, that might be an anatomical limiter. But a lot of the time, guys don't have these like very specific limitations. I mean, again, I could even include myself in that. I did manage to jump relatively high off 2 feet with good technique with the worst like mobility ever. And Nathan, I think specifically, did a really good job of taking to heart a lot of the things we said in 2020, 2021, 2022 of like a long penultimate step being better and internalizing that and perfecting it. And I remember being at your house, Isaiah, and Nathan was sending us videos of him jumping. And it was like his block foot was really high. Like it would whip around really high, almost across his knee. And you and I were like, is that bad? Like, should we not do that? Because you're like, I don't do that. But he maintained the integrity of being low, being fast, and his rhythm on the
I
last
was
contact being really good.
I was actually gonna bring up that exact thing about Nathan, that block foot coming in really high. What I think that stems from is actually us telling him to push hard on the penultimate, and then he over cued it, so his leg is like pushing really far behind him, and then it comes in.
The
Because
only way I can like reposition.
yeah, because I've seen that happen basically when guys over cue big push on the penultimate. One elite guy that does that is Guy.
Yeah.
Guy on his 2 foot jumps.
But the thing is, like, his ceiling is still so much higher with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you look at where Nathan is, like, it's easy to look back at 2021 and be like, well, he's barely dunking. Like, that's probably like it's fucked up. But I think what actually happened is his technique wasn't that bad. And it's not something that is like make or break. You know what I mean? It's not really dictating the force on the ground per se. If you were to do what is it called, a kinograph or whatever, where it's like side by side images. Maybe it's not exactly like you or Kilgannon, but it's better than other technically imperfect athletes, I would
There's
say.
also, and this will go to, I think, tip number 9 is what we're on.
I think it's 8 or 9. It's fine.
Yeah. Time.
Time is
Time
your friend.
is so important because I think, let's say you have bad technique and then you force yourself to have a long penultimate, but you're jumping low. I think by forcing yourself to do the right technique plus time, like if you do that for 3 years straight and you're jumping 50 to 100 times a week for 3 years straight, it's gonna look good and you're gonna jump
Yeah.
higher with that. I think that's what happened with Nathan. Is he just
Oh, it is. It is. You just stuck with it.
forced the good technique and then it sucks for a while. Like it sucks for a few months. But
Or years.
like your technique, like even let's take like short penultimate guys with short penultimates. Eventually, after a few years of doing it, they start lowering, like actually covering a lot of ground on the penultimate and all that stuff. But it's like if you do the good technique multiplied by time, like the results are really, really good.
Yeah, like I look at Travis, and Travis actually is pretty genetically gifted relative to Nathan. You know, like he came in dunking within, like I think he was coming in like doing
he was doing
two-handers.
like two-handers. I think he might have been able to windmill.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like he came to us at 17 or 18. Was he 17 or 18? How old was he?
18. I want to say 18. Might have been 17.
He might have been in high school. He might have been a senior
Yeah.
in high school. But he came to us already able to do a two-hander and a windmill. Nathan came to us, and he was shorter, I think, than Nathan. Nathan, and he was way overweight because he was eating poorly. And so like he lost that weight within 2 months and his vertical shot up. Like the first year, Travis saw more improvement than Nathan saw in probably the first 3 years, I would say, maybe like something around those lines. But now in terms of vertical, I mean, Travis jumps higher, but there's days where Nathan is like damn near close to where Travis is jumping in terms of height. And Travis might hate to hear that, but like Nathan has put a lot of time in. And I think that, I mean, Travis had other things happen, like his back pain. And obviously that's a big part of his story, which hopefully I'll be telling on my YouTube a little bit later. But Nathan staying with that and seeing the very slow incremental progress with how little genetically he was given and being able, again, to just stick with it and train 10 to 20 hours a week. Like that's insane. Most people aren't willing to do that for 5 years. You know what I mean? And you really have to love the process if you're going to do that. And most people don't. They just don't. I don't know what it is that, like, it's like people like you and I that have a little bit of a chip on our shoulder, and Nathan too, I think does, where we're like, I'm going to prove people wrong. And I'm willing to do this way longer than other people to prove them wrong and show them that I can do X, Y, and Z thing that maybe other people said
That's a huge part of it, man. Like I was I like watching my Alex Hormozi videos, and I remember he made a video on basically use what you have even if it's a negative emotion. And then most successful people, like take even like dunking out of it, like in any field, successful people usually have a chip on their shoulder, something negative that's motivating them. Whether, I know in Hormozi's case, it was like his dad. Like his dad was basically saying, "You're gonna be a bum if you don't go to be a doctor," essentially, like that type of thing.
That's crazy.
So he was always like motivated by that, right? Or it could be Jordan that's taking offense to anything and everything people are saying, or his coach. Bro, in Jordan's Hall of Fame speech, he literally talked smack to his high school coach that cut him.
Michael Jordan?
Like that, yes, that's crazy. Like you're the most successful basketball player of all time, literally considered the best, and you are 30 years, 40 years removed from this experience in high school.
And you're still like, F you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's actually a big motivator for me. Like I think because I was cut in high school, my coach was literally like, it was literally from not being athletic enough, not being tall enough. Then I think about all the cocky Utah kids, the privileged Utah kids, and the attitudes and stuff like that. And like, bro, that was a huge motivator for a long time. Even when we did the show in Jordan High School for the first time, it was like part of me was like, the coach wasn't, he had left the school probably like 2 years prior, but like I wish he would have been there. Like I wish I would have been able to like talk to him and be like, look at me now, motherfucker.
Yeah, that's
That's
kind of.
I mean, that's a huge motivator. And I bet if you were to talk to Travis or Nathan or any pro dunker that has specifically guys that improve a lot, not the guys that are like genetically gifted for it, but it's like a lot of guys have that kind of negative emotion that makes them stick with it for a long time.
I mean, I do for sure, dude. I've been doing this since I was 13, and I've told stories about the seniors telling me that I would never dunk, and people in my class being like, "You're wasting your time," or
Yeah.
talking shit about me training so hard and not being able to do anything. Or I get it all the time from comments still, and it's like, as I get a little bit older and I see a negative comment, I'm like, yeah, maybe you're right. I'm 31.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard to
Bro,
keep
comments motivated me for a long time. Like
Yeah.
I I feel like I bring it up a lot of the times when you're telling me about haters, like in your comments. Like
Yeah.
I've had haters at different points in my dunk journey. Like I remember the first time
You
me,
just don't
CJ,
ever talk about them.
yeah, like I
And I
remember the
never
first
see them.
time
So it's tough.
CJ, and Steven did a UCF dunk contest on the actual court. And it's a Division 1 basketball courts, 10-foot rims. And up to this point, we had been dunking a lot on 9-9 at Waterford. Chuck invited us to Naples. We dunked on like a 9-8 rim there. And
You
there
guys
was a
must have like
huge
gods.
there was a huge difference in how we looked at the UCF court versus the dunks that we were posting. And the comment section attacked us. Like they were like,
Who posted it, Steven?
we all did. Like we all posted it everywhere. I mean, mind you, we're hype as hell. Like we just did the super hype dunk contest, all this stuff. Like we're
You guys like
happy.
made dunks. Like you were excited.
Yeah, yeah. And then people just hated on it. Like so many guys hated on it and we're like, see, you guys aren't actually good, blah, blah, blah. And that was a huge motivator for the next 6 months. We started dunking on 10-foot a lot, eventually improved. We're able to do the same dunks there. I feel like the next big moment was
Oh,
Dunk League.
sorry, one
Bro,
second. Let
Dunk
me mute
League,
myself. My
Dunk
dogs are
League,
barking.
yeah. Dunk League season 2, where I was 19 and I sucked. That was my biggest motivator for, I mean, that was 2017. And I feel like I didn't cross the bridge of like, I'm like over this until season 3, which was 4 years later. So for 4 years straight, I was motivated by that negative experience. And like literally, like I was training for being on Dunkley and proving people wrong. Then 2022, I became a spiritual woke meditator. Now nothing motivates me. No.
Yeah, right. Everyone that says that just doesn't admit in the
Yeah, they're lying to themselves.
crevasses of their mind that there's some
Yeah.
deep dark motivation. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with it as long as you don't. I think there's a difference of like, dude, there have been times where Austin was talking shit to me about, both of you guys were, about how I was like gonna suck at that session at North Carolina, and
Yeah.
I went out and I was like, no, fuck that. Like, I'm gonna prove you wrong. And I did. I was right. And I didn't sit there and rub it in everyone's faces. I wasn't like, yeah, did you see that? Like, that's the worst way to go about it. I think what happens when you do prove people wrong is like a sense of like, I don't have to say anything because you know and I know, because it's so blatantly obvious that you were wrong. So I don't need to bring this up because that's petty. But
I try to just now use it. It's like
I mean, the
be
fact
aware
Michael
of it.
Jordan did is crazy.
Yeah. Like it's just like
That's insane.
it's almost like you have to use it very safe, like very carefully.
Yeah, it is. It can become a nuclear bomb if you don't use it appropriately. Like it can detonate you if you don't
Yeah. But
understand
it's powerful.
the implications.
Very, very, very powerful. And I think
I mean, yeah, dude, look at Nathan, man.
I think the guys that, hop off training or end up like
Dude, I don't relate to them, and it's taken me like 7 years to understand why. Because I'm just like, honestly, I just want to be like, you're a pussy. Like you don't like training.
We have a section. So when guys cancel on THP, we basically Austin talks to them and we want to find out why. Because it's like, is it something that we can improve on? Like, was the training not good? Like that type of thing. But we have a bracket where we put people under that we added today, and it's literally called pussy. And it's
It's not us being like fuck you, but
Yeah.
it's like we don't understand. Like I can't fathom going to my high school coach or someone being like, I quit because it's too hard. Like that, especially with jump training. If I would have had a roadmap when I was 13 and had that chip on my shoulder to be great at something, and you told me in 5 to 10 years you're going to be getting your head at the rim or whatever, I would have been like, hell yeah, give me the roadmap. Like, and then if you told me that roadmap's going to get better every year and more dialed in and I won't get hurt, I'd be like,
That's the
bro,
key
how much
thing,
do I have
bro.
to pay? How much do I have to pay?
Because
And people are like, yeah, it's too hard. I'm like, yeah, it's fucking hard because it's real. Like, it's the
yeah,
truth.
that's the key thing right there. You said 5 to 10 years. Because
No, people
honestly,
don't want it.
if you're an athlete, like if you grew up playing sports, because Nathan's basically getting his head to the rim. He's probably getting his head on a height check, 9'8", 9'9". It looks like his head at rim if you got that tripod angle.
Dude, I don't know though. He's on some of those jumps, like
Yeah.
that 0.90, 0.901,
Yeah.
0.905 play time. Like, that's legit. That's
Yeah, yeah.
really legit.
Like you're getting your head to the rim, but it took him around 5 years. And for most, I think that's doable for
Yeah, and it's
a
not
lot of
every week.
athletes.
It's not every week. Like, that might only happen a few times a
Yeah.
year, and most of the time
Mhm.
you're like in the whole training. And I think you have to love the process and wake up feeling like a monster every time you go to the weight room of like, I'm going to crush this workout. One, because each step you take forward, like once you get year 1, year 2, year 3 behind your belt and you kind of see how you look back at the journey and you're like, wow, I've made a lot of progress. I can't possibly stop now. But like that first year is tough, like, or even first month is really hard because it's like, you got to build the habit. And then you see a lot of changes month, probably by the end of the first month. If you hit all the volume, you'll feel like a different athlete and you'll be like, I
Yeah.
can't stop now. But most of the time, people have a hard time getting in the habit of doing that. And I mean, even myself moving to Florida, I've had issues with that at times because it's like logistically, I can't do everything exactly the way I want to do it. But
Yeah.
I think whenever you start to build that routine and that consistency, it's like you're not going to stop. You're just going to keep going. And I also thought about this. I was almost going to make it a requirement that people have to watch the entire Dragon Ball Z saga because it teaches you a valuable lesson of like training hard. And whether it's like, if you guys don't know Dragon Ball Z, you need to go watch it. But the protagonist is Goku, antagonist is
Yeah.
Vegeta for like the first season. And they both just train so hard. But the guy who's like kind of genetically better doesn't train. And the dude that like is training kicks his ass. And he's just like, the
Bro,
genetic guy's like, I gotta train. And then they both get way better.
another style of training, like, because I'm thinking like, I love the weight room and the suffering and all that stuff. And a big reason for that is because I know you're not a big fan of bodybuilding, but when I was 13, 14, 15, me and my friend Garrett, we'd watch Ronnie Coleman videos, or we'd watch I brought up the other day, Tom Platz
Tom
suffering,
Platz.
like his quad workouts, right? Not for the workouts, because I don't do bodybuilding.
It just
But
taught you how to work hard.
yeah, it's like you're
You had to
watching Ronnie
suffer.
Coleman do 800 for 2, and he's screaming, hyping himself up. He's like, "Yeah, buddy, ain't nothing but a peanut, lightweight." Like he's like saying all that stuff. And then the other one, Olympic weightlifters. I was watching freaking Dmitry Klokov,
Oh, hell yeah, I
with
love
his
him.
crazy ass workouts and them screaming, and like that was a huge inspiration. Bodybuilding, Olympic weightlifting, powerlifters, strongmen. I would watch their training and I was just like, it was cool. Like it's cool. Like, and you start to understand,
Dude,
how
some of
hard
our best athletes are previous bodybuilders because
they know how to
they
suffer.
understand how hard you have to work and they know how to suffer. And they're like, yeah, it fucking sucked. I loved it. And I'm like, yeah, now you get it. Or like track and field guys, a lot of the time,
Yeah.
they can be really good. The problem with track and field guys is they program hop a lot because they're like, what's the most advanced training? What's the most advanced training? What's the most advanced training? Like, and someone's always selling their shit, off the cart. So you kind of have to tell them like, look, you're going to be better if you just stay consistent and whatever else. And yeah, I definitely think there's a layer of like, I don't want to call it neurosis because it's like, again, it's
Kind of
so
is.
powerful, but and this all comes back to the penultimate step because it's really like now I have a lot of data. I have like 7 years of data that I've been able to look at after studying the penultimate step since 2018 off 2 foot specifically, not 1 foot, 2 foot. 1 foot is a whole different thing. And it wasn't talked about. It wasn't really a thing. Obviously, over the last, I would say 10 years, it's probably been refined and explained and taught more so. And some of the older OG guys are like, that doesn't matter, just jump all the time. Like that's a strategy. But from experience, there are kids that I see walk in day one that are multi-sport athletes that were throwing 90 miles an hour in pitching or 80 miles an hour in pitching, can run maybe like a probably like a 4.8 and a 40-yard dash, have a 30-inch vertical, can power clean 175, bench, whatever, 200. And then there's kids like Nathan that come in running in the 5 seconds in a 40-yard dash, not even like barely touching rim at 6 foot or grabbing rim off a full approach after working on it a lot. Can't squat even 135, can't power clean at all. Like the kid, obviously, in the former example, I would think has a way higher genetic potential than Nathan. And I worked with a lot of youth athletes in person. But the difference is athlete A has a short penultimate step and isn't willing to change it because he's already so good and all this other stuff. And he's like, oh, I'm just going to stick with it, blah, 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 blah. Athlete B is like, wow, I fucking suck. I need to do everything perfectly to be able to get to a point where I'm better than athlete A. You know what I mean? Athlete B is Nathan. Athlete A is another example from a high school kid that I was coaching when I was coaching the athletic lab. But like, I would have expected Nathan to never get to the point he is now. You know what I mean? Or even I could have been athlete A in this example, and Nathan's athlete B. And yeah, I think there's just so much to being willing to take the long road and being willing to stick with it and continue to work on it and improve on it. Like, so another good example is Dean Jackson, dude. Fucking Dean Jackson has been trying to go to the MLB since he was probably 15, right? Now he's probably one of the utmost experts in pitching. He's still training to go to the MLB. I think he's my age, like 31, 32. He's had so many surgeries on his shoulder. He's had different procedures done for nerves. He's tried like everything and tested everything under the sun. And he has studied the biomechanics, 3D motion analysis. He has 3D motion capture on a mound that he uses to study throwing mechanics and force plates. So he can verify what really matters and continue to improve it, mostly for himself, but also, again, for his athletes. And that's another example to me of like someone that's willing to stick with something so long and see it through to the very end. Like, dude, I mean, his story is pretty incredible. That's a story that if you guys haven't heard, it would be a really good one to share on my YouTube channel because it's pretty inspiring. But that's the athlete that you should strive to be, in my opinion. And if you're on our training, we don't make promises like gain 6 inches in a month or something. That might happen if you're really genetically gifted, but like you should strive to be the Nathan, not the person that gains 6 inches in a month. Like that's just not realistic for a lot of people, I would say, and
it should be a requirement, like what you said earlier. Like if you should be willing to stick with it for 5 to 10 years. Like if you look at yourself and you're like, yeah, this is something I see myself doing for 10 plus years.
Yeah.
That's like the type of person we want. Whether you're genetically gifted or not genetically gifted or like whatever it is, whatever your reasonings for it, if it's like you want to do this for the long haul, it's like that's the type of athlete that we like.
And I think like
you like training hard. Like
I think a lot of people like the outcome because it feels good. It feels good to crush a dunk. It feels good to crush a spike or whatever else. But like you realize that training is such a big part of that. And eventually you get desensitized to that. And you're like, I want better. I want more. I want better. I want more. And then you fall in love with the process. Next thing you know, you're like, I like training. I like making this a part of my identity as a person. That like, I am someone who works hard. Here's an example of a way that I work hard in my life. I do it through training, right? Like to me, they're not that different. People that work really, really hard and very intelligently and are willing to do it for a long time are just more successful in life in general, right? And if you can do that, I think what happens a lot of the time is that people want to make it their career because they love it so much, which like obviously you and I kind of relate to, but I wouldn't generally advise that because it's a pretty crowded space already. But if you can be the type of person that's just willing to make this something that you love and truly enjoy for the long haul, like, yeah, you're gonna wake up weighing 185 pounds of like sheer muscle mass, no fat mass, and with a 45-inch vertical and be like, this shit rocks. Like, I like this a lot. Like, so yeah, that's kind of my lens on it. And all the steps we just said about the penultimate step are, I guess, with that kind of lens, you know what I mean? Of you got to do this for a long time.
That's no.
Unless, I mean,
number
day
10.
one, you might be someone that in 1 year is better. I would just say most of you are probably not if you're watching this.
Yeah.
Like,
All right, cool. Well, I think that is a good spot to end it. And
perfect.
if you want to jump higher, go to THPstrength.com. And if you want a free week of jump training, you can also check out the link in the description. And I think it's on our website too, the free week of training somewhere in there if you search around. Yeah, pretty good podcast.
Don't be like the athletes we talked about negatively in this
Yeah.
video, this episode. That's my advice. All right, see you guys.